War Commander Vextal stood in the center of his ship's command bridge. His forearms crossed behind his back as he watched the blue and green planet grow larger on the main screen. His gray skin had the pale tint that came from spending too many cycles in space, and his large black eyes reflected the light from distant stars. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. "Distance to target world?" Vextal asked without turning around. 2 million units and closing, War Commander," replied his navigation officer. The young Zephyrian's voice carried the excitement that came with his first scouting mission. "Estimated arrival at optimal scanning range in 6 time periods." Vextal nodded slowly. This was his 43rd reconnaissance mission, and each one followed the same pattern. His 3-ship fleet would approach an unexplored system, catalog the dominant species and their military capabilities, then report back to the Zephyrian Empire with recommendations for conquest. It was routine work, but important work. The planet they approached was called Earth by its inhabitants according to their intercepted communications. The 3rd planet from a yellow star in a system the locals called Sol. Intelligence reports suggested the species there had barely figured out how to leave their homeworld. A few crude metal ships had been detected moving between their planet and its single moon, but nothing that suggested serious spacefaring capability. "Scout Captain Crixmo report." Vextal spoke into his communication device. The response came immediately from the lead scout ship. "Cloaking systems operating at full efficiency, War Commander. No signs of detection from the local species. Their sensor technology appears even more primitive than our initial reports suggested." Vextal smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Excellent. Begin preliminary surface scans as we discussed. I want population centers identified and military installations cataloged. Standard conquest assessment protocol." "Understood, War Commander." This species called themselves humans, and from what Vextal had read in the intelligence files, they seemed typical of pre-spacefaring civilizations. They had divided their single planet into numerous competing territories and spent most of their energy fighting among themselves rather than developing proper military technology. The report suggested they still used primitive chemical-based weapons and had never unified under a single government. Perfect for conquest, in other words. Vextal had seen it dozens of times before. A species would develop basic technology, spend a few thousand cycles fighting over resources on their homeworld, then eventually be discovered by the Zephyrian Empire. The pattern never changed. These humans would have maybe 5,000 trained warriors at most, scattered across their various competing factions. Within a few cycles of the main invasion fleet arriving, they would surrender or be eliminated. The War Commander walked to his tactical station and pulled up the preliminary data his scouts had gathered during their approach to the system. The humans had built settlements on every continent of their world, which showed industrious nature. But the settlements appeared small and poorly defended. Their largest population centers held maybe a few million individuals each, and most showed no obvious military fortifications. "Scout 2 reporting," came another voice through the communication system. "Beginning detailed analysis of the northern continent. Initial scans show multiple population centers connected by transportation networks. No obvious military installations detected at this range. Continue scanning," Vextal replied. "Focus on areas that might hide military facilities. These species sometimes bury their weapons underground." Vextal had learned that lesson early in his career. Some species were clever enough to hide their military strength, though it rarely amounted to much. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 47 worlds using the same methods, and none had ever posed a real threat. Their technology was simply too advanced, their ships too powerful, their weapons too sophisticated. The humans seemed even less threatening than most. Their intercepted communications showed they still used radio waves for long-distance contact, which was laughably primitive. Their space vehicles appeared to be powered by controlled chemical explosions, barely capable of reaching their own moon. They had no evidence of energy weapons, force fields, or faster-than-light travel. "War Commander," called his communications officer, "we're receiving updated intelligence from the advanced reconnaissance probe that passed through this system 6 cycles ago. Display it." The main screen changed to show a series of images taken from long range. Cities scattered across the human homeworld with primitive aircraft moving between them, ships floating on the planet's water surfaces, which seemed to be a major form of transportation for the species. Groups of humans in matching clothing, which the intelligence analysts believed were their military units. Vextal studied the images carefully. The groups of humans in matching clothing numbered maybe a few hundred individuals in each image, typical for primitive military units. Add them all together across the entire planet, and the humans probably had fewer warriors than a single Zephyrian battle group. Scout Captain Crixmo, are you detecting any orbital defense platforms? Vextal asked. Negative, War Commander. No weapons platforms detected in orbit around the planet. They have several small space stations, but our scans indicate they're used for scientific research and communication relay. No defensive capabilities detected. Even better. Most species at least managed to put a few weapon platforms in orbit around their homeworld by the time they achieved basic spaceflight. The humans hadn't even managed that simple defensive measure. Vextal began composing his preliminary report in his mind. Species designation: human. Technology level: primitive chemical and mechanical systems. Military assessment: minimal threat. Recommended invasion force: standard occupation fleet with minimal ground troops. Expected resistance duration: less than 1 cycle. It would be another easy conquest for the Empire. The humans would probably surrender as soon as they saw Zephyrian ships in their sky. Most primitive species did exactly that when faced with obviously superior technology. Those few that chose to fight rarely lasted more than a few time periods before their primitive weapons proved completely ineffective against Zephyrian shields and armor. Scout 3 reporting, came a third voice. Completing scans of the southern continents. Population distribution appears even more scattered than the northern regions. Numerous small settlements, but no major military concentrations detected. Continue with detailed analysis, Vextal ordered. I want complete military assessment within 12 time periods. The war commander walked back to his observation position at the center of the bridge. Through the transparent metal viewport, he could see the other 2 ships in his reconnaissance fleet maintaining perfect formation as they approached Earth. Each ship was equipped with the most advanced scanning equipment the Zephyrian Empire could produce, capable of detecting military installations from millions of units away. His crew was the best the Empire had to offer for reconnaissance work. Scout Captain Crixmo had participated in 15 successful scouting missions. His sensor operators could identify weapon signatures through dozens of units of solid rock. His intelligence analysts could predict enemy military behavior based on cultural patterns observed from space. And yet, as Vextal looked at the peaceful blue and green world growing larger ahead of them, he felt almost disappointed. The humans seemed so completely unprepared for contact with an advanced, spacefaring civilization that conquering them would be barely worth the effort. There would be no challenge, no opportunity for his crews to demonstrate their skills, no chance for anyone to earn promotion through distinguished service. War Commander, his sensor operator called out, I'm detecting some unusual readings from the planet's surface. The energy signatures are stronger than expected for such a primitive civilization. Vextal turned toward the sensor station. Specify. The power generation appears more extensive than our intelligence report suggested. Also, there are numerous electromagnetic emissions that don't match typical pre-spacefaring communication patterns. Probably industrial activity, Vextal replied. These species often have surprisingly large manufacturing capabilities, even with primitive technology. Continue monitoring, but don't let it distract from military assessment. The war commander returned his attention to the tactical display. Within a few more time periods, his scouts would have complete information about human military capabilities, and he could finalize his conquest recommendation. The Zephyrian High Command would be pleased with another easy target added to their expansion plans. He had no idea that everything he thought he knew about the species called humans was about to be proven completely and catastrophically wrong. Scout Captain Crixmo stared at his sensor display with growing confusion. The numbers didn't make sense. What he had initially cataloged as a small settlement in the mountainous region of the northern continent was showing energy readings that suggested something much larger. He adjusted his scanning frequency and ran the analysis again. The results were the same. Worse, actually. Sensor Technician Yildar, verify these readings, Crixmo ordered, his voice tight with concern. The young technician's claws clicked rapidly across his control panel as he ran independent scans of the same area. After several moments, he looked up with wide eyes. Captain, the readings are confirmed. That facility is generating power levels consistent with a major industrial complex. Not a civilian settlement? Crixmo felt his stomach drop. He had been scouting primitive worlds for 8 cycles, and he knew what normal settlements looked like on sensor displays. This was not normal. Expand the scan radius. I want detailed analysis of everything within 1,000 units of that. Location. As the sensors swept across a wider area, more disturbing readings appeared on Crixmo's display. What he had thought was a single unusual facility was actually part of a much larger complex. Underground tunnels connected multiple installations across dozens of units. Power conduits suggested heavy industrial activity. Most concerning of all, the electromagnetic signatures indicated sophisticated communication networks. On the surface of Earth, Lieutenant Alex Rodriguez sat in the command center deep inside Cheyenne Mountain, monitoring satellite feeds and communication traffic. He noticed a brief flicker in one of the deep space monitoring systems, but attributed it to normal background interference. The coffee in his cup had grown cold hours ago, but he barely noticed as he scrolled through routine data streams. Rodriguez had no idea that alien eyes were watching his facility with growing alarm. To him, it was just another quiet shift monitoring America's defensive networks. To Scout Captain Crixmo, the installation he was observing represented military infrastructure on a scale that challenged everything he thought he knew about primitive species. Captain, Sensor Technician Yildar called out, his voice shaking slightly. I'm detecting similar installations across the entire northern continent. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Crixmo abandoned his position at the tactical station and moved directly to the sensor controls. He had to see the data himself. What appeared on his screen made his breathing quicken. Facility after facility showed the same pattern. Heavy power generation, sophisticated communication networks, underground construction that suggested military purposes. Open communication with War Commander Vextal immediately, Crixmo ordered. The connection established. Within moments. Report, Scout Captain, came Vextal's familiar voice. War Commander, we have a problem. The initial intelligence about human military capabilities appears to be completely incorrect. I'm detecting military installations across this continent that are far more extensive than anything in our reports. There was a long pause before Vextal responded. Specify the nature of these installations. Underground facilities connected by tunnel networks, power generation levels that suggest major industrial activity, communication systems that appear to coordinate activities across vast distances. This isn't what we expected to find, War Commander. Crixmo transmitted his sensor data to the command ship while he waited for Vextal's response. He knew the War Commander well enough to predict his reaction. Vextal never accepted unexpected data without thorough verification. Meanwhile, General Patricia Wells walked through the corridors of the Pentagon, reviewing briefing documents for the next day's meetings with Allied military commanders. She paused at a window overlooking the Potomac River, thinking about logistics requirements for the upcoming joint training exercises with European forces. The paperwork in her hands detailed coordination between military units across 3 continents, but to her it was just routine planning. She had no way of knowing that alien scanners were analyzing her building at that very moment, identifying it as one of the largest military command centers they had ever detected. The electromagnetic signatures from the Pentagon's communication systems were painting a picture of military coordination that spanned the entire planet. Scout Captain Crixmo expanded his scanning range to include the entire continent. What he found made his hands shake as he worked the controls. Every major population center contained multiple military installations, facilities that his sensors identified as training grounds, weapons storage, vehicle maintenance, and command. Centers were scattered across the landscape in numbers that defied belief. Yildar, how many individual military facilities have we cataloged so far? Crixmo asked. The sensor technician checked his displays multiple times before answering. Captain, I count over 300 confirmed military installations on this continent alone. And we haven't finished scanning the coastal regions yet. 300. Crixmo had scouted species that had fewer than 50 military facilities on their entire home world. The humans apparently had hundreds just in one section of one continent. Lieutenant Commander Jake Mitchell stood on the deck of the USS Gerald Ford, watching flight operations as dozens of aircraft launched and recovered in precise coordination. The carrier group was conducting routine training exercises 200 miles off the coast, maintaining readiness levels that the Navy considered standard operational procedure. Mitchell checked his watch and made notes about aircraft turnaround times. The efficiency of the flight deck crew impressed him as always, but this was just another day of normal operations. He had no idea that alien sensors were analyzing his ship with growing horror, identifying weapon systems and aircraft capabilities that exceeded anything in Zephyrian military databases. To Scout Captain Crixmo, the massive floating facility represented military technology that shouldn't exist on a primitive world. The aircraft operating from its deck showed performance characteristics that approached early spaceflight capabilities. The weapon signatures suggested destructive potential that could threaten Zephyrian ground forces. "Captain," Yildar called, "out urgently. I'm detecting multiple similar vessels. They appear to be operating in coordinated groups across the planet's water surfaces." Crixmo switched his display to show a global view of human naval activities. What he saw made his blood run cold. Dozens of large military vessels were operating simultaneously across multiple oceans. Each one carried enough firepower to level a major city. Each one was part of coordinated fleet operations that demonstrated military planning on a planetary scale. War Commander Vextal's voice crackled through the communication system. "Scout Captain, I've reviewed your sensor data. Expand your reconnaissance to include all continents immediately. I need to know if these military installations are limited to the region you've been scanning." "Already in progress, War Commander," Crixmo replied, though he dreaded what they might find. The results came in quickly as all three scout ships coordinated their scanning efforts. The southern continent showed the same pattern: major military installations connected by sophisticated communication networks. The eastern continents revealed even more extensive facilities, including what appeared to be massive weapons manufacturing centers. Major Lisa Campbell led her battalion through combat training exercises at Fort Bragg, coordinating movements of hundreds of soldiers across multiple training areas. The exercise was designed to test coordination between different military units, and Campbell was pleased with how smoothly everything was proceeding. Her radio crackled with reports from squad leaders as they completed each phase of the training scenario. From space, the alien sensors detected the coordinated movement of military units across dozens of locations simultaneously. What appeared to be a single training exercise to Major Campbell looked like planetary-scale military mobilization to Scout Captain Crixmo. The communication traffic between units suggested command structures that could coordinate military activities across entire continents. "War Commander," Crixmo transmitted, his voice barely controlled. "The military installations are not limited to one continent. Every major landmass contains extensive military infrastructure. The scale of their military organization exceeds anything in our databases." Vextal's response was sharp. "Are you certain these readings are accurate? Double-check all sensor calibrations." "Already done, War Commander. Multiple independent scans confirm the same results. This species has built military infrastructure on a scale we've never encountered before." For the first time in his career, Scout Captain Crixmo began to wonder if the Zephyrian Empire had made a serious mistake in selecting Earth as a target for conquest. The humans weren't the primitive species their intelligence reports had described. They were something else entirely, and Crixmo was beginning to suspect that something else might be very dangerous indeed. War Commander Vextal stood frozen at his command station, staring at the data streaming in from all three scout ships. The numbers on his display seemed impossible. His sensor operators had run diagnostic checks on their equipment 17 times, and the results never changed. The humans had not thousands of warriors as expected, but millions upon millions of trained soldiers. "This cannot be correct," Vextal muttered, his forearms trembling slightly. "No species maintains military forces of this magnitude." The resource requirements alone would cripple their civilization. His intelligence officer, a seasoned analyst who had participated in the conquest planning for 12 worlds, approached the command station with obvious reluctance. "War Commander, I've cross-referenced our sensor data with historical records from our previous conquests. The human military infrastructure exceeds the combined military capabilities of the last 8 species we conquered." Vextal felt his confidence cracking like ice under pressure. In 43 reconnaissance missions, he had never encountered anything like this. The largest military force he had previously catalogued belonged to the Takarian species, which maintained approximately 50,000 warriors across their entire star system. The humans appeared to have 10 times that number on a single continent. Colonel Brad Thompson walked across the training field at the joint military exercise in Germany, watching as American, British, German, and French forces coordinated a complex simulation involving over 20,000 soldiers. The exercise was designed to test international cooperation in large-scale operations, and Thompson was impressed by how smoothly the different military units worked together. Thompson checked his tablet for updates from similar exercises happening simultaneously across Europe and North America. NATO protocols required regular training to maintain readiness levels, and today's exercises involved over 200,000 military personnel across multiple countries. To him, it was routine alliance maintenance. To the alien scouts observing from space, it looked like a planetary species preparing for interstellar warfare. Scout Captain Crixmo transmitted his latest findings to the command ship with hands that shook from stress. "War Commander, the coordination between human military units spans multiple continents. They're conducting simultaneous training exercises involving hundreds of thousands of soldiers. This appears to be standard procedure for them, not emergency." Mobilization. The response from Vextal was barely a whisper. "How many total military personnel have we identified?" Crixmo consulted his displays, though he had memorized the terrifying numbers hours ago. "Current count exceeds 15 million. Active military personnel, War Commander, and our analysis suggests this represents only their immediately available forces, not their total military capacity." 15 million. The Zephyrian Empire's entire military consisted of approximately 2 million soldiers spread across 47 conquered worlds. The humans had 7 times that number on a single planet, and they had never left their own star system. Captain Amy Stevens led her fighter squadron through training maneuvers over the North Sea, coordinating with similar formations from 6 different air forces. Her radio filled with professional chatter as dozens of pilots executed complex aerial exercises. The sight of so many military aircraft operating in perfect coordination always filled Stevens with professional pride. From their position, millions of units above Earth, the Zephyrian scouts watched thousands of aircraft participate in simultaneous training exercises across multiple continents. Each aircraft showed performance characteristics that rivaled early Zephyrian atmospheric fighters. Each pilot demonstrated skill levels that suggested extensive training and experience. The coordination between units indicated command structures capable of managing military operations on a scale the Zephyrians had never imagined possible. Scout 2 reporting, came an urgent transmission to Vextal's command ship. "I've identified what appears to be a major military academy. The facility is training thousands of new officers annually. War Commander, they have dozens of similar institutions across their planet." Vextal closed his large black eyes and tried to process the implications. The humans were not just maintaining massive standing armies, they were continuously producing new military leaders in numbers that suggested permanent preparation for warfare. No species they had encountered before showed such dedication to military readiness. Admiral Carlos Rivera stood in the command center of the Pacific Fleet headquarters, coordinating naval operations across the world's largest ocean. His displays showed the positions of over 300 vessels, from massive aircraft carriers to smaller patrol boats, all participating in a training exercise designed to test fleet coordination capabilities. Rivera was particularly pleased with how smoothly the multinational aspects of the exercise were proceeding. Ships from 7 different navies were working together, as if they had trained together for years. The communication protocols developed through decades of alliance cooperation allowed seamless coordination between forces that spanned multiple continents. The alien scouts observing these naval exercises struggled to comprehend what they were seeing. The human naval forces alone outnumbered the entire Zephyrian space fleet. Each major vessel carried enough firepower to threaten Zephyrian ground installations. The coordination between fleets suggested military planning capabilities that exceeded anything in Zephyrian experience. War Commander, Scout Captain Criximo's voice carried a note of panic. I'm detecting submarine vessels operating beneath the water surfaces, dozens of them. Each one appears to carry weapons capable of striking targets on land from vast distances. Submarine warfare was a concept foreign to Zephyrian military thinking. Their species had evolved on a desert world with limited water. Resources and the idea of hiding military assets beneath water surfaces had never occurred to their strategists. The humans had turned their planet's oceans into concealed military bases, hiding weapons platforms that could strike anywhere on their world without warning. Vextal realized that every assumption the Zephyrian Empire had made about planetary conquest was being challenged by human military organization. They had based their invasion strategies on the idea that primitive species would concentrate their military forces in obvious locations. The humans had distributed their military capabilities across their entire planet, making it impossible to eliminate their military capacity with conventional invasion tactics. Lieutenant Colonel Danny Foster reviewed production schedules at a defense manufacturing facility, coordinating with similar installations across North America to ensure military equipment quotas were met on schedule. The factory behind him operated around the clock, producing vehicles, weapons, and equipment for military forces worldwide. Foster's tablet showed updates from hundreds of similar facilities operating simultaneously across multiple continents. The global defense manufacturing network could produce military equipment at rates that exceeded consumption during peacetime, building stockpiles that could support extended military operations. To Foster, it was efficient industrial planning. To the alien scouts, it represented industrial military capacity that defied comprehension. Scout 3, reporting critical findings, came another urgent transmission. The humans have converted their entire industrial base to support military operations. Their manufacturing capacity for weapons and military equipment exceeds our most optimistic estimates by factors of hundreds. Vextal felt his legs become unsteady. He had led reconnaissance missions against species that struggled to equip a few thousand warriors with basic weapons. The humans had built industrial systems capable of equipping millions of soldiers with advanced equipment, and they were doing it continuously as a matter of routine procedure. The tactical implications were staggering. Even if the Zephyrian Empire committed their entire military to conquering Earth, they would face human forces that outnumbered them by more than 7-1. Those human forces would be equipped with weapons produced by industrial systems that could replace losses faster than Zephyrian forces could inflict them. Senator Helen Murphy concluded her review of the defense appropriations budget, satisfied that funding levels would maintain military readiness at required levels. The numbers in her documents represented financial commitment to military preparedness that spanned multiple years and covered every aspect of defense planning, from personnel training to equipment procurement to research and development. Murphy had no way of knowing that alien analysts were studying intercepted fragments of her budget data with growing terror. The financial resources the humans dedicated to military preparedness exceeded the total economic output of most species the Zephyrians had conquered. These were not primitive beings struggling to maintain a small warrior class. These were sophisticated civilization builders who had organized their entire society around the concept of military readiness. War Commander Vextal finally understood the full scope of the disaster facing his reconnaissance mission. The Zephyrian Empire had not discovered a primitive species suitable for easy conquest. They had discovered a military superpower that could probably conquer them. Scout Captain Crixmo felt his breathing become irregular as he studied the latest sensor data from the human industrial facilities. What he was seeing violated every principle of military logistics that Zephyrian strategists had developed over centuries of conquest. The humans were not just maintaining massive armies, they were feeding those armies with production capabilities that seemed to operate without limits. Sensor technician Yildar focused deep scans on the manufacturing centers. "I need detailed analysis of their production rates," Crixmo ordered, though part of him feared what they would discover. The results appeared on his display within moments, and Crixmo wished he had never asked for the information. A single human manufacturing facility was producing military vehicles at rates that exceeded the total production capacity of 3 Zephyrian industrial worlds combined. And there were thousands of such facilities operating simultaneously across the human planet. Lieutenant Colonel Danny Foster walked through the main production floor of the defense contractor facility, watching robotic assembly lines work with precision that impressed him even after 5 years of overseeing military manufacturing. The factory operated in 3 shifts around the clock, producing armored vehicles, weapon systems, and communication equipment for military forces worldwide. Foster checked his tablet for updates from the global production network. Similar facilities across North America, Europe, and Asia were maintaining the same production schedules, creating a continuous flow of military equipment that supported forces on every continent. The logistics coordination required to manage such vast manufacturing networks represented organizational capabilities that Foster considered routine, but which would have seemed miraculous to most civilizations. From space, the Zephyrian scouts watched manufacturing centers that operated at scales they had never imagined possible. Each facility showed energy consumption patterns that indicated heavy industrial activity. Transportation networks moved finished products to distribution centers that supplied military forces across vast distances. The coordination between facilities suggested centralized planning that could manage production across an entire planet. "War Commander," Crixmo transmitted to the command ship, "the human manufacturing capabilities are beyond our ability to quantify accurately. They appear to be producing military equipment at rates that exceed their consumption by significant margins." Vextel's response was barely audible. "Are they building stockpiles for extended warfare?" "It appears so, War Commander. Our analysis suggests they maintain reserve equipment sufficient to supply their military forces for prolonged conflicts lasting multiple cycles." The concept of maintaining military stockpiles for extended warfare was familiar to Zephyrian military planners, but the scale of human preparation defied comprehension. Most species they had conquered maintained reserves sufficient for, perhaps, 1 cycle of intensive combat. The humans appeared to be prepared for warfare lasting many times longer than that. Senator Helen Murphy reviewed the latest defense appropriations report in her office, noting with satisfaction that research and development funding had increased again this year. The document detailed investments in military technology that spanned dozens of research institutions and hundreds of individual projects, from improved armor materials to advanced communication systems. Murphy was particularly pleased with the international cooperation aspects of the defense research programs. American scientists were working closely with researchers from allied nations, sharing discoveries and coordinating development efforts that benefited military forces worldwide. The technological advancement rates suggested continuous improvement in military capabilities year after year. The alien scouts analyzing intercepted fragments of human research data struggled to understand the implications of what they were observing. The humans were not content to maintain their existing military technology. They were continuously developing new weapons, better equipment, and more efficient systems at rates that suggested technological advancement was a permanent priority for their civilization. Scout 2 reporting came an urgent transmission to Vextal's command ship. "I've identified what appears to be a major military research installation. The facility shows characteristics consistent with weapons development activities. War Commander, there are hundreds of similar installations across their planet." Vextal felt his confidence collapse completely. The humans were not just maintaining massive military forces with extensive manufacturing support. They were continuously improving those forces through research programs that operated on planetary scales. No species the Zephyrian Empire had ever encountered showed such dedication to military advancement. Dr. Kevin Walsh led his research team through another series of tests on the new armor materials, pleased with the results they were achieving. The project was one of dozens being conducted at the facility, each focused on improving different aspects of military equipment. The coordination with similar research centers across multiple countries ensured rapid sharing of discoveries and accelerated development timelines. Walsh checked his schedule for the afternoon conference call with international partners. Research teams in 7 countries were working on related projects, and regular coordination meetings ensured that discoveries in one location quickly benefited researchers everywhere. The global nature of military research cooperation meant that technological advancement proceeded at rates that individual nations could never achieve alone. From their position above Earth, the Zephyrian scouts detected research facilities that showed activity levels consistent with major technological development programs. The electromagnetic signatures suggested sophisticated equipment and experimentation that rivaled anything in Zephyrian research installations. The coordination between facilities indicated research programs that spanned multiple continents and involved thousands of scientists. War Commander, Scout Captain Criximo's voice carried a note of desperation. The humans appear to be conducting advanced military research at rates that exceed our own technological development programs. They're not just maintaining their current military capabilities, they're continuously improving them. The implications were staggering. Zephyrian conquest strategy depended on technological superiority over primitive species. If the humans were conducting military research at rates that matched or exceeded Zephyrian development programs, that technological advantage might not exist at all. Major Transport Officer Linda Cruz coordinated supply shipments from her logistics center, managing the movement of military equipment and supplies to bases across 3 continents. Her displays showed the real-time status of thousands of supply convoys, aircraft cargo flights, and naval transport vessels, all working together to maintain military readiness levels worldwide. Cruz was particularly proud of the efficiency ratings her logistics network had achieved. The coordination between transportation systems allowed rapid deployment of equipment and personnel to any location on the planet within hours. Emergency response capabilities meant that military forces could be reinforced or supplied anywhere in the world faster than most people could travel between cities. The alien scouts observing human logistics operations struggled to comprehend the organizational complexity they were witnessing. Transportation networks that could coordinate simultaneous operations across multiple continents represented planning capabilities that exceeded anything in Zephyrian military experience. The speed and efficiency of human logistics suggested they could deploy military forces anywhere on their planet with remarkable speed. Scout 3 reporting critical analysis. Came another transmission to the command ship. The human logistics capabilities appear to enable rapid military deployment on planetary scales. They can move equipment and personnel across vast distances in time periods that our forces would require for local operations. Vextal realized that human military organization was not just larger than anything the Zephyrian Empire had encountered, it was fundamentally different. The humans had created military systems that operated as integrated planetary networks rather than traditional territorial forces. Their manufacturing, research, and logistics capabilities were designed to support military operations that could be sustained indefinitely. The strategic implications were terrifying. Even if Zephyrian forces managed to establish a foothold on the human world, they would face continuous reinforcement from industrial systems they could never locate or destroy. Human research programs would continue developing countermeasures to Zephyrian technology. Human logistics networks would ensure that resistance could be maintained indefinitely. General Peter Hayes concluded his briefing at the Pentagon, satisfied with the coordination levels being achieved between Allied military commands. The meeting had covered joint training exercises, equipment standardization programs, and intelligence sharing protocols that ensured seamless cooperation between military forces worldwide. Hayes was particularly pleased with the progress being made in communication, systems that allowed real-time coordination between commanders on different continents. War Commander Vextal stared at the complete reconnaissance data displayed across his command bridge, and for the first time in his military career, he felt genuine fear. The numbers were undeniable. The humans possessed military capabilities that exceeded the entire Zephyrian Empire by orders of magnitude. What should have been a routine scouting mission had become the discovery of the most dangerous species the Zephyrians had ever encountered. Communications officer, establish priority transmission to Zephyrian High Command immediately, Vextal ordered, his voice steady despite the terror running through his veins. Classification level, extreme threat assessment. His communications officer, a veteran of dozens of conquest campaigns, looked up with confusion. War Commander, did you mean to say minor threat assessment? We've never used extreme threat classification for a pre-spacefaring species. You heard my order correctly, Vextal replied grimly. Establish the connection. Scout Captain Crixmo transmitted his final analysis to the command ship, though he dreaded adding more devastating information to their already catastrophic assessment. War Commander, long-range scans indicate the humans have detection capabilities we didn't anticipate. Several of their monitoring stations have been tracking gravitational anomalies in this system. They may be aware of our presence. The possibility that the humans knew about Zephyrian ships in their system added another layer of danger to an already impossible situation. If the humans had detected them and chosen not to respond, it suggested confidence levels that terrified Vextal. A species that ignored unknown spacecraft in their home system either possessed defensive capabilities far beyond Zephyrian estimates, or they were deliberately allowing the reconnaissance to continue for reasons the War Commander didn't want to consider. General Peter Hayes walked into the Situation Room at the Pentagon for his morning briefing, unaware that alien observers were analyzing his every movement with growing dread. The briefing covered routine military readiness reports from Allied commands worldwide, but to Hayes it was just another day of maintaining global defense coordination. Intelligence reports show normal activity levels across all theaters, Hayes told his staff. Training exercises are proceeding on schedule and equipment readiness remains at optimal levels. Allied coordination continues to improve, and our rapid response capabilities are functioning within expected parameters. Hayes had no way of knowing that the routine military activities he was discussing represented defensive capabilities that could challenge an interstellar empire. The alien scouts listening to intercepted communications from his briefing heard discussions of military readiness that suggested the humans were prepared for threats they hadn't even encountered yet. War Commander, Crixmo's voice carried new urgency. I'm detecting launch preparations at multiple human space facilities. They appear to be preparing to send additional monitoring equipment beyond their planet's atmosphere. Vextal felt his breathing become shallow. The humans were expanding their detection capabilities into space, just as Zephyrian reconnaissance was reaching its most critical phase. Whether this was coincidental timing or a deliberate response to alien presence, it represented an unacceptable risk to his ships and crews. Captain Julie Brown led her Special Forces unit through advanced combat training exercises in the mountains, practicing techniques designed for operations in extreme environments. The exercises tested coordination between different specialized units and included scenarios that pushed equipment and personnel to their operational limits. Brown was impressed by how quickly her soldiers adapted to new tactical challenges. The training program continuously evolved to address potential threats that military planners could imagine, ensuring that special forces remained prepared for situations that conventional forces might not encounter. The flexibility and innovation demonstrated by her troops reflected training programs that prepared for unknown challenges rather than just familiar ones. From space, the alien scouts observed military training that demonstrated tactical sophistication they had never seen before. The human special forces were practicing combat techniques that seemed designed for warfare against technologically superior opponents. The adaptability and innovation shown in their training suggested military thinking that prepared for threats beyond their current experience. Scout 2 reporting. Came another urgent transmission. The humans appear to be conducting training exercises specifically designed for combat against advanced technology. Their tactical adaptations suggest they've considered the possibility of warfare against spacefaring species. The implication was chilling. The humans weren't just maintaining massive military forces for conflicts against other humans. They were preparing for wars against enemies they had never encountered. showing strategic thinking that anticipated threats from beyond their own world. Lieutenant Ashley Parker monitored deep space communication arrays from her station at the radio telescope facility, tracking signals from various sources across the galaxy. Her equipment was designed to detect and analyze electromagnetic emissions from natural cosmic sources, but it was sensitive enough to identify artificial signals if they appeared in the data streams. Parker noticed brief energy signatures that didn't match any known natural phenomena, but the signals were too weak and brief to analyze properly. She made notes about the anomalies for further investigation, unaware that she was detecting electromagnetic emissions from Zephyrian reconnaissance ships that were desperately trying to remain hidden. The fact that human detection equipment could identify Zephyrian ship signatures even partially represented another technological capability that exceeded intelligence estimates. The humans had built monitoring systems sensitive enough to detect stealth technology that had successfully hidden Zephyrian ships from 47 other species. All scout ships begin withdrawal to minimum safe distance immediately, Vextal ordered, abandoning any pretense that they could continue covert reconnaissance. Maintain communication silence until we reach the outer system. His 3 scout ships began their retreat from Earth orbit, moving with careful precision to avoid detection by human monitoring systems that had already demonstrated uncomfortable sensitivity to their presence. The withdrawal felt like a defeat, though Vextal knew it was actually a strategic necessity that might save the Zephyrian Empire from catastrophic miscalculation. Admiral Carlos Rivera reviewed fleet readiness reports in his Pacific Command Center, noting with satisfaction that naval forces worldwide were maintaining high operational tempo. The coordination between fleets from different nations continued to improve, and joint training exercises had achieved efficiency levels that exceeded planning targets. Rivera was particularly pleased with new detection systems that could monitor vast areas of ocean space for unusual activity. The technology demonstrations had shown impressive sensitivity to anomalous signals, and the global network of monitoring stations provided coverage that few potential threats could avoid. The alien scouts, now retreating beyond the range of human detection systems, had monitored enough of human naval coordination to understand that the planet's oceans were under complete surveillance. Any attempt at oceanic landing would be detected and met with coordinated response from multiple fleets simultaneously. War Commander, Crixmo transmitted from his retreating scout ship. Final analysis confirms that human military capabilities exceed our combat capacity by factors that make invasion impossible with current Zephyrian resources. Recommendation: immediate diplomatic contact to establish peaceful relations. Vextal was already composing the most important report of his career. The message to Zephyrian High Command would fundamentally change their empire's expansion strategy. Instead of recommending Earth for conquest, he would be recommending immediate diplomatic overtures to prevent the humans from viewing the Zephyrian Empire as a threat. Communications Officer, prepare transmission burst to High Command. Priority: classification, Empire Survival Alert. The message Vextal transmitted would reach Zephyrian leadership within days, carrying information that would shock military commanders who had never encountered resistance they couldn't overcome. The report detailed military capabilities that suggested humans could not only defend themselves against Zephyrian invasion, but could potentially launch countermeasures that would reach Zephyrian worlds. As his ship retreated beyond the heliopause, Vextal took one final look at the blue and green planet that had shattered every assumption about primitive species. The humans continued their routine activities, unaware that they had just avoided a war by being too powerful to attack. The Zephyrian Empire would need to find new strategies for expansion because they had discovered a species that represented either the greatest potential ally or the most dangerous potential enemy in their history. War Commander Vextal hoped his leaders would choose diplomacy over conflict, because the alternative might be the end of Zephyrian civilization itself. His reconnaissance mission was complete, but instead of cataloging another easy conquest, he was carrying home a warning that would change everything.